Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, April 3rd, 2021. We made it out of March, surprisingly. And this is How the Frack We Got. This is actually How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, we do try to keep this as a family-friendly podcast. With our language, sometimes some words will fly. However, there is some video that we may sometimes show that might be of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So like I said, guys, we are basically recapping what happened this week. And unfortunately, we do need to start with the Derek Chauvin trial. It's been 5 days in, and these are the highlights that we have so far from days 1 through 5.
Good morning, members of the jury.
The story of what happened May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, told today through the lens of eyewitnesses.
I had already assessed that he had an altered level of consciousness. What I needed to know is whether or not he had a pulse anymore.
Genevieve Hansen is an EMT and was off duty on a walk when she ended up feet from George Floyd as he was pinned under the knee of Derek Chauvin, wanting to help with, at the very least, chest compressions.
When you couldn't do that, how did that make you feel?
Totally distressed.
Were you frustrated?
Yes.
Donald Williams was standing right next to her.
I believe I witnessed a murder.
After Floyd's seemingly unresponsive body was loaded into the ambulance that day, Williams called the police on the police he had just witnessed, in particular, Derek Chauvin. That 911 audio was played in court.
He just pretty much just killed this guy that wasn't resisting arrest.
Williams didn't feel he could talk to the officers at the scene.
Did you, believe that they were involved?
Yes, totally.
But the most contentious exchange of the trial so far...
Did you say that?
Is that what you heard?
...was between Williams and Chauvin's attorney during cross-examination.
You called him a bum at least 13 times. Those terms grew more and more angry. Would you agree with that?
They grew more and more pleading for life.
The defense emphasizing a point it made during opening statements, that the perceived threat from a growing crowd caused Chauvin to direct his attention away from Floyd's care. The next witnesses appeared by audio only, since they were under 18 at the time of Floyd's death, including a 9-year-old and her now 18-year-old cousin, only identified as DF. She's the one who filmed the now infamous cell phone video seen around the world.
I see a man on the ground and I see a cop kneeling down on him.
She was asked to identify Derek Chauvin in court.
Are you able to tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if you know who this man is? You can take your time.
Yes.
She said she felt threatened by the police there, including Chauvin that day, a day she can't let go of, even close to a year later.
When I look at George Floyd, I look at I look at my dad. I look at my brothers. It's been nights. I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
And that was actually day one, as far as the recaps there. And as you can see, I've said it before of the midweek podcast, was that the trial is not about George Floyd. The trial is about Derek Chauvin and his actions in which he murdered George Floyd. But as you can see from the lawyers, like I said before Wednesday on the midweek recap, this is actually what defense lawyers do. Defense lawyers will always go character assassination. Whether it is on the person that they're accused of killing or the witnesses that come forward in defense of the victim. They will always try to do that in the sense that you just saw lawyers sit there and try to say, well, the witness may have already had a bias against police. Yeah, we're black. We always have a bias against police. That's not a given. But at the same time, he tried to make the case more about his feelings toward the police and not the actual observation. Even more so, just yesterday, another officer, a training officer with the Minneapolis Police Department, did come forward and actually gave his opinion on what happened as far as Derek Chauvin's Chauvin's actions on that day that did lead to George Floyd's death.
I've been working for the Minneapolis Police Department, been trained to kneel on the neck of someone who is handcuffed behind their back in a prone position.
No, I haven't.
Is that, if that were done, would that be considered force?
Absolutely.
What level of force might that be?
That would be the top tier, the deadly force.
Why?
Because of the fact that if your knee is on a person's neck, that can kill him.
And in your training with the Minneapolis Police Department, over the years, have you received training on restraining people?
Yes.
Including the use of handcuffs?
Yes.
And when you are handcuffing somebody, when you handcuff them, what is your responsibility as an officer with regard to that person?
Well, could I give you an example?
Okay. Well, let me ask you this again. If you, as an officer, according to the training, you handcuff somebody behind the back, what's your responsibility with regard to that person from that moment on?
That person is yours. He's your responsibility. His safety is your responsibility. His well-being and is your responsibility.
Once you handcuff somebody, does that affect the amount of force that you should consider using?
Absolutely.
How so?
Once a person is cuffed, the threat level goes down all the way, you know, to they're cuffed. How can they really hurt you, you know?
Well, certainly there could be circumstances when a cuffed person could still be combative.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah. But you getting injured is way down.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, if you're, you could have some guy try to kick you or something, but you can move out of the way. That person is handcuffed, you know, and they, the threat level is just not there.
So by handcuffing somebody, you've taken away some of their ability to harm you.
Absolutely.
And if somebody who is handcuffed becomes less combative, does that change the amount of force that an officer is to use under policy?
Yes.
How so?
Well, if they become less combative, You may just have them sit down on the curb, or the idea is to calm the person down, and if they are not a threat to you at that point, you try to help them so that they're not as upset as they may have been in the beginning.
In your 30 years of training with the Minneapolis Police Department, in your experience, have you been trained on the prone position?
Yes.
And what has your training been specific to the prone position?
Well, once you secure or handcuff a person, you need to get them out of the prone position as soon as possible because it restricts their breathing.
When you handcuff somebody behind their back, well, as part of training, have you been handcuffed behind the back?
Yes.
And have you been trained on what happens to individuals when they're handcuffed behind the back?
Yes.
So when somebody is handcuffed behind their back, how does it affect them physically?
It stretches the muscles back through your chest, and it makes it more difficult to breathe.
And now...
Says a lot, folks, doesn't it? So basically, guys, from what's going on there, it's, as you said before, that was actually a former, well, not former, a Minneapolis police officer who was a training officer who sat there and pretty much said in so many words that basically he didn't actually, not only did he not need to be in the prone position, but that he was less of a threat when handcuffed. And yet, you saw the lawyer did try to talk about exactly, you did see the lawyer try to, try to really word it properly as far as, is this force type of, is excessive force needed? Of course, he said that was top tier. He sat there and said, once he's in the prone position, should the person that's handcuffed remain in the prone position? Of course, they obviously know why it restricts their breathing. And obviously, he did say the one thing that the lawyers did want that to be put on record, was flat out, if you put your knee on somebody's neck, there is a chance you can kill them, and we don't train that way. So, again, it's an interesting point that he makes in all this, because, again, this is kind of suggesting that Derek Chauvin was not following police tactics, and obviously he wasn't. But he also didn't say the words I thought, where he's like, well, when the person's handcuffed, what are the officers trying to do? Well, they should be, and I'm like, the word you're looking for is de-escalation. De-escalation is the word you're looking for. To bring the situation out, the subject is restrained, and he's no longer a threat. You're trying to de-escalate the situation so he's a bit more calmer, or they're a bit more calmer. So, again, we are 5 days in with that trial, so we're going to see where that goes from there as the trial resumes on Monday. But like I said, we'll just have to pretty much see where it goes. But as it is, I mean, it's obvious to a lot of people that Derek Chauvin really did commit a murder. Let's just be honest about that. But speaking of other things, I always like making fun of Republicans. I make fun of Democrats too, but I like making fun of Republicans because there's the so-called party of family values. They're the party of less control of government, but yet they're always the ones getting caught with women on the side, with babies outside of marriage, or if they're against gay rights, they usually have a gay lover. Well, Matt Gaetz can now finally join that party he's so fond of.
Matt Gaetz under federal investigation for possible sex trafficking of a minor. That's according to law enforcement officials. The Republican lawmaker denying the allegations. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders has more.
Allison, NBC News can now confirm there are 2 investigations, one by the FBI looking into whether Representative Gaetz did indeed traffic a 17-year-old girl across state lines for sex. Now, Representative Gaetz says that this is absolutely false, saying that these are false sexual allegations, and now we lead to the second investigation, and that is all based on Representative Gaetz saying that somebody said this to extort money from him, $25 million. Representative Gates saying that the FBI has actually used his father to gather some of that information. The FBI not commenting on either of the investigations, other than that NBC News can confirm that there are two separate investigations. Again, the allegation of bringing a young girl across state lines for sex, and number two, that the story about that was put out and that there's an extortion effort to get the Gates family to pay up to $25 million to hush it up. Allison, this is one of the stories that has a lot of people talking without a whole lot of facts at this point. It was initially broken by the New York Times. The New York Times sourcing of this has been not 100% matched by NBC News, but there have been comments in Axios as well as on Fox News. This is what Representative Gates told Fox News.
It is a horrible allegation, and it is a lie. What is happening is an extortion of me and my family involving a former Department of Justice official.
Who is this girl? What are they talking about, the New York Times?
The person doesn't exist. I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false.
It's important to underscore this. At this point, this is simply investigation. There are no charges. Allison?
Well, let's be honest. There's no charges now. And also, let me say this before. Child sex trafficking is not something to joke about. It's a very serious thing that's going on. But at the same time, it's Matt Gaetz. For all those that don't know, Matt Gaetz was the guy who, made fun of Mask, who loved Trump because he got ahead under him. This guy had a face that makes you want to punch him. It said douchebag all over him. But now he's under investigation for possibly trafficking a minor across state lines for sexual favors. Let's be honest, in the party of Republicans, does it really sound that far off? I'm just saying. But again, it's interesting where they all try to say now, no evidence has been brought forth about this, so it's just an investigation. Really? That didn't stop y'all from Deshaun Watson and the multiple lawsuits he has about women are alleging sexual assault, and it's up to 19 now. What is he, Bill Cosby Light? So again, I find it interesting that in the party of family values, that stuff like this always comes up. Yes, I mean, just like Newt Gingrich cheated on his wife, and, we can go down the list of all famous Republicans, because I'm pretty sure there's a skeleton in a closet or two, a skeleton in each of their closets, or maybe 30. But again, this just goes to show you that the party of family values is a little bit hypocritical, just saying. But moving right along, guys, definitely want to get some other news that did happen, I believe, yesterday or day before yesterday. That unfortunately the U.S. Capitol may not be safe enough to bring down the fences for a while.
Suspect in a car rammed two Capitol police officers at the security barrier at the Capitol complex, then got out of the vehicle wielding a knife, police say.
He did not respond to verbal commands. The suspect did start lunging toward U.S. Capitol police officers, at which time U.S. Capitol police officers fired upon the suspect.
At least one of the officers was stabbed, an official tells CNN. One officer died from his injuries, William Evans, an 18-year veteran of the force. A second officer was injured.
I ask that you keep our U.S. Capitol Police family in your thoughts and prayers.
The suspect, identified by sources as Noah Green, age 25, is dead as well. He was not familiar to Capitol Police, authorities said. No initial indication of ties to terrorism, but the motive is unknown.
Clearly, this was someone who was actively trying to just get at whoever or whatever. We just don't know.
A unit from the National Guard was immediately deployed to assist. Members of Congress are mostly out of town during the break. Authorities say they're not aware of a particular lawmaker being targeted, but an emergency lockdown order was issued for the complex. The incident comes amid an increase in reported threats to lawmakers in recent months and a debate over removing more of the fencing around the Capitol, in place since the January 6th riot targeting lawmakers, and reducing the National Guard deployment. some members on both sides of the aisle had been chafing in recent weeks.
It's really discouraging to see the razor wire, the fencing, the image that it sends to the world. So if that threat no longer exists, I would hope that we can return to normal.
Today's incident could reverse that debate.
What it shows is that there are people out there that want to hurt us. And so we got to do more and we got to do better.
In today's case, praise for the response by the police.
Unfortunately, we lost Officer Evans today, but by and large, that system worked. The Capitol Police responded. They stopped him. The system worked.
Now, also at the same time, a little bit that was reported later in that story was that the man may have been having mental issues. The one that actually tried to ram the U.S. Capitol and was killed, which again kind of says two things. Number one, Trump made it easy for a lot of people to try to go after offices of Congress. He made it very easy. At the same time, they underestimated, again, going back to January 6th, they underestimated people supposedly quote-unquote safe that decide to bum rush the Capitol. And in this case, this man, despite, because of his mental issues, they were saying that he believed the government was quote-unquote trying to infect his mind, again, did signal mental issues and unfortunately did lead to his death. Now, of course, the U.S. Capitol, those fences ain't coming down for a while, and the National Guard is definitely not going away. Simply put, because if this man tried to go into it, it would make sense that more may try to do it in the future. But then again, it's just sad because, again, I've been saying this along with many other people out there, that there is a cry for mental help out there. And again, if you are experiencing mental issues or things of that nature, there are many, many different avenues of help and assistance. Because we definitely don't need another person like that to end their life in that manner. We really don't. There's help out there for all of you guys, even you Trump supporters, if you ever come out of your Kool-Aid. Oh, good afternoon, sir. Hope all is okay on your end. Yes, it is. And I'm sorry, it still says anonymous on my side. I'm still fixing that. So hopefully, I think Adam, that was you. I hope it was you, Adam. If Adam, it was you. Hope you're doing all right on your side of the pond too, man. But aside from that, let me also get into this other video I did show midweek. Again, I have been saying this when I saw this video itself. Nobody is. You always hear people talk about, well, I would do this in this situation. Well, you won't know because the situation never happened to you. So in this case, this was a situation of just, it's not what you did as the action occurred, it's what you did after it's passed.
With more on the most recent hate crime against Asian Americans, this time happening in New York City, again in New York City. Police arresting this man after surveillance video caught him repeatedly kicking a 65-year-old woman who was on her way to church. Eva Pilgrim joins us now with more. And we want to warn everybody, the video is disturbing. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Robin. It was the middle of the day. She was walking here behind me to church during one of the holiest weeks of the year. But before she got there, she was brutally attacked.
This morning, police say this man, 38-year-old Brandon Elliott, is behind bars, arrested overnight on charges of felony assault as a hate crime after this brutal beating of a 65-year-old Asian woman. Authorities say surveillance video shows Elliott violently kicking the woman to the ground and then repeatedly on the head. They say he also made anti-Asian statements telling the woman she didn't belong here.
It's just outlandish for me to think that no one intervened.
In one video, door staff and a delivery person are just feet away, appearing to watch from inside a building. One person then shuts the door.
Close their door on a woman lying on the sidewalk. Isn't that the perfect symbolism of exactly what is happening right now?
The building's owner announcing it suspended the door staff pending an investigation. It's also trying to identify the delivery person. Eventually, someone did help the woman. She was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Hate crimes against Asian Americans are up nearly 150% in major cities across the country, up by at least 833% in New York City.
We've often been viewed as invisible and as foreigners. People need to understand that Asian Americans are just as American as anyone else.
And NYPD is stepping up patrols in predominantly Asian neighborhoods, but this attack happened just steps from the heart of Times Square.
That says a lot, doesn't it? I mean, like I said before, I'm not expecting anybody to sit there and immediately jump in when there's danger, because number one, I always sit there and say you don't know what that person could have. The person that's attacking said person could have a gun on them, could have a knife. Understandably, that some people may be hesitant to jump in unless see that they have anything, or there's more of him than there is of you. I get that. However, the aftermath of it all, that the woman is sitting right there after being assaulted, and you see you see one individual literally close the door. How? And I said, it's amazing to me. You see a person sprawled out after they've just been attacked, and your first thing you want to do is close the door. I mean, it's sad. I mean, it is sad that a lot of Asian Americans are being attacked as of late, basically, because again, this goes back to what Trump said, Trump's rhetoric out there, and he's not doing anything to quell it, even when he doesn't have Twitter anymore. He's not quelling the fact that he's still saying that the coronavirus came from China, it was developed in a Chinese lab, and then, of course, as the ignorance of some people moves forward, they think that, China lab, Chinese, it must be Asian people. Which, again, this actually not only puts Asian Americans in danger, but Chinese and Japanese Americans as well. Because I almost said what I didn't want to say. Those people do not care. I mean, in their mind, they all look alike. Let's be honest, what other race out there besides us has heard that one before? But again, this is why I sit there and say there needs to be more done. And I know it's gonna seem very cold. It's gonna seem very cold from black people that are now looking at what's happening to Asian Americans, and they're like, us too. They will attack us. They will beat us. They will spit on us. They will light us on fire. They will hang us without a second thought. And we can sympathize with Asian Americans, but at the same time, where is the justice finally going to be done with this? Because again, it's going to get to the part where I said a lot of people start using the Second Amendment, and those concealed carry is going to become a lot more frequent now, just because of situations like this. But moving right along, guys, I did want to talk about another story about a very Sandra Bland-esque story in which another black man had died basically in the possession of cops.
They do this to my baby. It's the question Lysandra and Marvin Scott Jr. have been asking for nearly 3 weeks.
Ever since the family received the news via text message from the medical examiner,
Telling them their son, 26-year-old Marvin Scott III, was gone. He died here while in custody.
I want everybody held accountable.
On Thursday, a step.
Marvin Scott's family was relieved to hear that these men have been terminated. Today we learned that there's an 8th suspect.
But attorney Lee Merritt says justice for Scott's family requires more steps.
However, they're most concerned about these men being held criminally accountable.
Allen police arrested Scott on March 14th on a marijuana possession charge. He died in jail hours later. Scott's family says it's likely that he was having a mental health crisis. In a statement, the sheriff said the Texas Rangers criminal investigation is ongoing and that, quote, evidence I have seen confirms that these detention officers violated well-established sheriff's office policies and procedures. Merritt says Scott's family will meet with the Collin County Prosecutor's Office this week.
We were encouraged to hear that the previous week, once we released the preliminary results from our autopsy, that the prosecutor's office decided to meet with our forensic pathologist from American Forensics in order, hopefully, to expedite the grand jury presentation.
They want transparency when it comes to what exactly happened.
We're still looking forward to seeing the video and having that video released to the family and to the community.
The truth hurts. I want the truth. I want to see this.
In Collin County, I'm Morgan Young.
And that says a lot. Again, another black person died while in custody of officers. And that's why I said it's Sandra Bland all over again. Because, again, we got questions of how this was able to happen. among six officers in that detention center. And of course, yes, they've been terminated, but if they've been terminated, then what are the criminal charges coming forward? And how was this actually allowed? And even more so, what were the policies they violated? Because again, a lot of unanswered questions. And I know that an investigation is still ongoing, but it's like, we need more than just officers terminated. I was saying this before, as a, you want to actually make some changes happen with law enforcement, that every time they are caught in the wrong, their pension should go to the victim of the families. Trust me, if you think nothing hurts worse than watching something that you saved up for your whole entire life that's supposed to take care of you for the rest of your life gets taken away from you. And trust me, that's one of these things I say that we are a major determinant in law enforcement, is that the pension fund for the officers should be taken away from them and given to the families. I guarantee that'll curb a lot of that mess that we're seeing out there right now. But we will definitely follow that story as it comes along, because again, there's a lot of questions that need answers on why this man died in custody. Aside from that, guys, I did want to talk about Georgia, because Georgia did come up with a new voting law, because Brian Kemp, now he believes that there's voter fraud and decided to change the voting rights in there. Because let's be honest, the voting law that Georgia and many other states are considering doing is not because of voter fraud. They're doing this because of voter turnout. Keep in mind, a lot of African Americans voted this year in the special elections with Georgia that sent Joel Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock to be the first to be not only be senators, but Raphael Warnock to be the first black U.S. senator ever elected in Georgia. And of course, that did not sit well with Georgia, because some people believe Georgia is a conservative or red state. So Brian Kemp decided sometime last week to do a no voting restriction law that did so many new things to basically curb, well, mostly black people from voting. Well, a lot of people didn't like that law, and apparently the businesses have spoken, because a major donation to the state of Georgia, the MLB, decided to do this.
Baseball is known as America's national pastime, but MLB declared what it's seeing in Georgia right now decidedly un-American, reacting to a polarizing package of voting laws by pulling the plug on the All-Star game in Atlanta. Commissioner Rob Manfred writing, "The decision will demonstrate our values as a sport. Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box." Georgia Governor Brian Kemp firing back late Friday on Fox News.
Major League Baseball has folded up and caved to the cancel culture and a bunch of liberal lies, quite honestly.
Shockwaves from the decision now rippling through the Braves' home county.
While I certainly am disappointed that Major League Baseball has decided to pull the All-Star game from Cobb County, Georgia, I certainly do understand.
The social stand coming with economic repercussions. Voting rights activist Stacey Abrams commended the league for speaking out, but added, "I don't want to see Georgia families hurt by lost events and jobs. Georgians targeted by voter suppression will be hurt as opportunities go to other states." Some Fortune 500 companies based in Atlanta, like Coca-Cola and Delta, have blasted the law, calling it unacceptable. And for the sports world, this is not unprecedented. Several years ago, the NBA removed the 2017 All-Star Game from Charlotte following a controversial transgender bathroom law. One of sports' biggest stars and new MLB owner, LeBron James, weighing in on Georgia, "Proud to call myself a part of the MLB family today."
And Major League Baseball says right now it is finalizing a host city. We should be learning the details of that very soon. Guys, here in Miami, Marlins CEO Derek Jeter backing the league, saying we should be supporting any measures that expand access to voting, not doing anything that adversely impacts someone's ability to cast a ballot. Peter and Kristen, back to you.
Sounds a lot, doesn't it? And I've always said this before. I know that, voting counts, but you know what else votes? We know what else counts? Money. And in this case, the MLB is a cash cow. Not only for whatever state that it's in, businesses, bars, hotels, restaurants, near attractions make buku bucks when something like the MLB is in. It's kind of like how the All-Star Weekend for the NBA in Miami is always a cash cow. And what the MLB has done, I commend them for that. Just because they are literally and figuratively using their base, which is not about voting, it's about bringing money. And Georgia will be hurt by this. Plain and simple, because again, this was the actions of a governor that decided that, oh, we need to protect our voters when there was no counts of fraud. And at the same time, by the voters, you mean you need to protect the conservative voters by making sure that the black people can't vote as much as they did this year. They're not the only site. Movie makers are also boycotting Atlanta as well. Because keep in mind, a lot of movies are made in Georgia, specifically the ones at the Tyler Perry Studios. Because his studios, a lot of movie companies actually use, including Disney, especially for Marvel stuff, which is actually shot in Georgia. And now, right now it hasn't been confirmed, but it looks like to be like Disney may be halting its production in Georgia as part of this, which again, they haven't officially said that they're pulling I'm sorry, they haven't said they haven't officially pulled their production from Georgia, but right now it is on a brief pause as they consider options, which again goes to actually show you guys money can actually change some things. Don't get me wrong, voting changes things too, as we've obviously seen this year. But money, when it's pulled from somewhere, gets a lot more attention. And especially when you have filmmakers, you have sports. If you think about it, if the Atlanta Hawks start sitting out games, that's also a big thing. So again, this all goes back to see whether or not that Brian Kemp changed their mind. We will see. But then again, he unfortunately can't be removed for another 3 years unless he's recalled by the state. But we will follow that story as it develops. Now, another thing I want to show guys, I know with remote learning is still going on for the better part of America. I know some kids are actually in school. Some kids are still doing half and half. But it's always amazed me so that teachers always feel a need to do some stupid stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love educators. I do. They make up a lot of who I am today, but not these teachers.
I mean, these parents, that's what kind of piece of they're black. He's black. They're black family.
I know it.
You know? Oh, kids are
Kids are having this problem all over the place. Look, lady, you've got a computer and a hotspot. It's working.
Whenever she's telling me, oh, I won't have trouble loading, I went into the Hapara because it's a school computer and I watched it. I projected the screen.
So not only were you tying up, you were on Zoom also, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
and I was projecting what I am seeing onto the Zoom.
You were consuming bandwidth for Zoom. You were consuming bandwidth for Hapara. And it was consuming bandwidth for uploading. And what do you know? It worked fine. Sounds like the hotspot's working just fine.
Yeah.
Is that integrated with the Chromebook?
This is crazy. Yeah. I knew she was racist.
She couldn't deny it. She was trying to tell me he didn't have signal, nothing works, nothing loads. And I was projecting everything he was doing because I could see it.
Wow, lady.
On the screen. Then she could not. Oh, well, I guess it is loaded. Oh, well, finally, it's coming up. It's just loading with normal.
I'm so glad that you get to see what we're going through. I'm seeing what you're not going through.
Yeah, that's what happened. There's no problem there. Your son has learned to lie to everybody and make excuses.
Are you
to be entitled. Because you taught him to make excuses that nothing is his fault. This is what black people do. This is what black people do. White people do it too, but black people do it way more.
Crazy, right? That you literally, it's okay. Look, I get educators, I do. Remote learning can be hard because a lot of students have different ways of learning. This is true. So a lot of them really kind of need that in-person education because they're having difficulties with remote learning. This is also true. But again, if this is your attitude toward black children and your black students, don't be a teacher. Be something else, but don't be a teacher. The fact of the matter that you sat there and said, well, her son has learned to lie, but then again, black people lie a lot. White people do too, but black people do a lot more. And then, of course, the expletive deleted because we all probably know that she said the N-word at the beginning of this call. But to forget that you're on a Zoom call, which I don't blame the mother. I don't blame the mother or the family at all. That especially the teacher being reassigned. That's the killer part. The teacher was reassigned. Keep in mind, they didn't say the teacher was fired. They said she was reassigned. That's a little disturbing because that means that somewhere right now, she's teaching another class with the same mindset and learned nothing when she should have been fired. There is no room for racism in education. I mean, racism or prejudice for that matter. And I don't blame the mother. I don't blame the mother for suing because maybe it was good that the teacher forgot that she started an open Zoom call with people. But above all else, she should have been fired. Because if this is your attitude toward minorities, I can only imagine everything else that you're trying to teach them. But I thought that was crazy. I thought that was asinine. And again, just goes to show you that some of these teachers really need to start getting their background checks in order because, like I said before, you can have an opinion about how you feel about other races, but if you're in a job, if you're in an employment where you affect other children, we honestly don't need you there. We don't at all. But moving right along, guys, I did want to talk about this one. And I said, oh my, the winds have changed. President Biden is reviewing executive authority to cancel student debt. He's asked the Education Department to review his legal authority to cancel debt and that he will determine how he could proceed. Now, also keep in mind, guys, this came from the same guy that during a press conference turned around and sat there and said, will you be able to cancel student debt? He goes, no, I won't be able to. And then the reporter asked, would you be able to cancel up to $50,000 in student debt? He says, no, I won't be able to. He says, no, I will not. And then gave this whole example of, we know my kids, they all went to college, they all graduated with debt, and they found jobs, they were able to pay that off. He started going this whole route, but Joe kind of forgot something. Joe, even though you were the quote unquote poorest politician in Congress, you still had plenty of connections to where your kids all found great jobs and were able to pay off their loans. That's usually how it would usually work if that were possible. So now, again, I think the latest count for the student loan debt, I think we're kind of nearing 2 trillion, 1.7, 1.8, I believe. So if you think about it, we'll round that off. So round up nearly $2 trillion in debt for student loans. And of course, Joe Biden is betting big. Keep in mind, they already did pass a $1.9 trillion relief plan, which did get us our $400 checks and many other payments out there. He is talking about doing another $3 trillion for America's Jobs Plan, for doing the infrastructure and things of that nature, rebuilding America's roads and broadband, things of that. And again, it is interesting that he wants to see what he can do about student debt. Keep in mind, he said he was comfortable up to canceling $10,000 of student debt, when really a lot of people are at least sitting at anywhere between $90,000 to over $100,000 in student loans. I've said this before and I've said this again. We have the ability to cancel student loans. If you cancel student loans or did debt forgiveness, do you understand that the amount, because credit is everything, especially if you're looking for a home or a car or just jobs in general. Because yes, for a lot of people out there, jobs check your credit. They really do, especially if you're working in the financial sector. They check your credit. If you work in security, they check your credit. Trust me, because your debt to income ratio will signal you as a risk for fraud or anything else. Fraud, robbery, or anything else. Yes, it does, according in their eyes. So now, yes, from a credit standpoint, it would be great because the credit profiles of Americans would rise if President Biden decided to go ahead and cancel student debt altogether. It can be done, because if the Pentagon can get nearly $10 trillion over the last 10 years and doesn't have to account for any spending, that says a lot. I even said it best. You want to cancel student debt? Cut the military budget in half. That's it. You want to know where the money comes from? Do a wealth tax on the rich, or actually twofold. Increase the corporation tax back up to 39%. Increase and induce a wealth tax because the wealthy can't pay for it. And on top of that, cut the military budget in half. You will then have more than enough to cancel student loans off the backs of Wall Street, the rich, and cutting the military budget in half. Simple. But it'll be interesting to see what they do, because like I said, right now this is just looking into the situation. As far as what his authority is, which Biden wants to do everything by the numbers. I get that, I understand that. But again, we've been saying this entire time, especially if you have student loans, because I know I do. And if you had them before and you were able to pay them off, kudos. You're one of the few that can actually do that. But for a lot of people out there, especially in this economy, and the fact that jobs are not paying what they should be paying, then yes, it is a little bit more difficult to pay out those student loans, especially when the jobs that you went for with your education may not be there as of yet. So I just want to point that out because there's always going to be one person that's going to sit there and say, well, I worked for, worked the second job and I was able to pay my student loans. Okay, cool. That's you. Not everybody has that ability. Moving right along, guys. Like I said, I know I mentioned remote places because a lot of people are working from home. I was until my manager decided it was a good idea for us to come in, and the manager's still at home. Yes, I'm talking about you because I know you watch this podcast. But that being said, guys, I did want to sit there and say that employers are now thinking of trying to get people back in the offices and a lot sooner than they think. In a survey of more than 350 CEOs, human resources, financial leaders, 70% said that they plan to have employees back in the office by the fall of this year. They are basing this off the fact that vaccinations are ramping up, and the simple fact of the matter is that COVID cases have not yet they've had increases, but they've been small, and now a lot of companies are trying to think about ways of getting their people back in the office by the fall of this year. Now, again, this is a business thing about it, and I've said it before and I've said it again, I still think it's a bad idea. COVID cases are still high. And keep in mind, they're still climbing. And as long as the cases are still climbing, it's still not a good idea to bring anybody inside. I mean, yes, vaccinations are becoming available. I actually had my shot. I actually had my first Pfizer shot as of yesterday. And I can report after 24 hours, I've had no side effects. But then again, I've stayed home. I've hydrated. I've ate. I've really cheated like a cheat day yesterday. But I've ate. Sat there and did my other podcasts, and I was fine. Now, this doesn't mean that it can be the same for someone else, because, like I said, these these vaccinations are, they're explaining in full detail what the side effects can be. Just in my point, I'm completely fine. But again, with vaccinations moving forward, a lot of people are hopeful about having, returning to somewhat, and I gotta keep saying this, we will never return back to what we used to do. This pandemic has shown us that companies will thrive, and people have realized they like working from home. So again, that brings up another dynamic. If your company decides that, if the company you work for decides that, okay, we want to start bringing back people in, and those very same people is like, well, can't we just work from home? It's worked out great. It brings up another situation. It's going to bring up the whole thing of what happens when you have people that just don't want to come in anymore. Because trust me, if you're like me and you're getting up just to be in traffic for 30 minutes just to get to work, and you're being in traffic at 30 minutes from work just to go home, working at home sounds like a winner. It really does. And a lot of companies have actually folded to that. Some companies have changed their business plans to where instead of, renting out office space and equipment, they just pretty much have the users go work from home and actually build their company from there, which a lot of startup companies are actually doing. So that does bring up the dynamic because, yes, as these vaccinations are happening, could we see implementations of this? Yes, probably later on this year. It's not, everybody getting their shots now, it's going to take a while for us to see the data on this. It's going to take for us a while to see if there's a decrease in COVID cases. It's going to take a while for us to see if we really see the effects of this happening. But I really do think it's ambitious on a lot of CEOs and businesses to sit there and say, well, we're going to be back in by the fall of this year. It's a little ambitious, considering the fact that there's still a lot of people, especially downtown Nashville. I will guarantee right now that the streets of downtown Nashville are packed with individuals wearing no mask and not doing social distancing. See, when I see stuff like that, I think to myself, this is why COVID cases will continue to happen, because we're not following the rules. But, businesses are trying to get themselves back in order. I understand that. But it's a little ambitious to go ahead and consider the fact of the matter of getting back to what they consider normal so soon. I just don't think it's going to happen. But also, before we get to our last story, before we get to our feel good segment, I never thought I would see New York do this. And I've been saying this the whole entire time of how to solve a particular problem. And so many cities and states are doing just that.
Lawmakers are on the verge of a deal to legalize adult recreational marijuana, a bud business boom eventually generating $3.5 billion a year in economic activity, according to estimates by Governor Andrew Cuomo's office. That may seem sky high, but take a look at more developed markets. Marijuana has been legal in Colorado since 2012. With less than a third of the population of New York, sales in the Rocky Mountain state topped $2.2 billion last year. California, with twice as many people, saw $4.4 billion.
Anytime you're starting a market from scratch, it takes time to set up. So I think the projections that I've been seeing is going to be about 1.2 billion in the first year.
The new law would create state licenses for farmers, distributors, makers, and retail locations where users could consume product on site, such as in lounges. The governor's office estimates it could create 60,000 new jobs and $300 million in tax revenue when the program matures. Blacks and minorities have historically been arrested more frequently than whites for low-level marijuana charges. The new law calls for an automatic review of those with low-level marijuana-related convictions and expunging the charges from their records. That would go a step beyond previous similar efforts by the governor. In 2019, after Cuomo signed a law removing criminal penalties for minor possession, over 150,000 had their previous marijuana convictions sealed. This bill hopes to tackle the economic imbalances. About 40% of the revenue would go to a new social equity fund for programs that help address those harmed by marijuana arrests, like job placement, housing, and legal barriers to reentry. While in the works for years, the push comes as Cuomo faces calls to resign after a series of sexual misconduct allegations and is seen as an olive branch to progressives, among the loudest calling for him to go. The law could be signed as early as this week, making New York the 15th state to legalize recreational marijuana and follows recent legalization by its neighbor, New Jersey.
I don't think it's going to be an immediate impact. I think New York is probably looking at 18 months to 2 years before legalization. So in the next 2 years, when the American Rescue Plan funding has been spent, this will be a new revenue stream that's up and running.
While some conservatives support the measure around medical aid, personal choice, and freeing up law enforcement resources, others highlight driver safety, health, and gateway drug concerns as ongoing sticking points. But supporters have heavily touted the business benefits, an easier pitch to some of those potential opponents in a time when state revenues are crushed by the pandemic. But what happens to those state revenues if marijuana is legalized on a federal level and those homegrown farmers and distributors now have to compete with national players?
If federal marijuana or cannabis policy changes, the benefits of a self-contained industry within a state can evaporate.
But for now, the loosening could be a boon for state tourism and leisure industries, ravaged by pandemic shutdowns and giving international visitors another reason to visit, and potentially a new meaning to a New York state of mind.
I have been saying this. You're the war on drugs. How do you beat the war on drugs? You tax it and legalize it. And New York, just like Colorado, just like I think Jersey and some other states, are now, it's about to join recreational marijuana. And again, I don't smoke it. I mean, again, like I said before, I have nothing against those that smoke. I have nothing against those who are midnight tokers and things of that nature. I'm actually for them because I have said this, I will say it before, I will say it again. Marijuana has never had a death. No one has ever died from smoking too much marijuana. The only thing that's ever happened is intense sleep and a feeling to go raid the fridge afterwards. That's usually the side effects. There are many applications for marijuana for those that are, especially cannabis oil, those that have seizures, those that have epilepsy, those that have nerve issues or nerve damage, those that are, seeking things to, calm pain because of constant pain and them going to pill mills, or taking on more dangerous drugs like Oxycontin and Percocet and things of that nature. At the same time, it's helped with mood swings. It helps with anxiety. I mean, there are so many things that marijuana actually has helped with that's been a lot safer to take in than drugs, as far as that actually have dangerous side effects, have been great. And cannabis oil has definitely helped, especially with children with seizures or things of that nature. It's helped them calm down and have less seizures. Again, it's helpful. Even though the plant itself has many applications as far as toilet paper, biofuel, and about a half a dozen other things. It is literally it's almost a peanut. It's almost as much as George Carver did with the peanut. The same thing can be done with the marijuana plant. But applications aside, think about the fact that the money that's been brought into it, because this is exactly what happened with Prohibition. For some odd reason, people had to think about smoking and drinking in speakeasies, and what happened? You legalized it. Once you legalized it, it became no longer a problem. So now, marijuana, because they think marijuana's a gateway drug, again, that's false. Marijuana has never been a gateway drug. That's been a conservative talking point for decades. Marijuana has never, has never led to cocaine or any other hard substances like that. Again, that's conservative rhetoric. What marijuana has done, especially for Colorado, has been booming. Has it done for Jersey? It's been booming. So imagine New York. New York, one of the biggest cities in the world, now has the right for adults to smoke marijuana. Can you imagine they say the estimated economic booms are over 3.3 billion. I think it'll be higher than that. I mean, considering the fact of the matter that certain businesses will open, new businesses will open, which of course leads to new jobs. And at the same time, guys, you're looking at the simple fact of the matter of just the beauty part about this. The expungement of marijuana convicted offenses, which means there's going to be less people in prison and more people possibly opening their own doors. And at the same time, for people that are actually looking for new jobs, that would have to be put in there that you testing positive for marijuana on a drug test will no longer disqualify you from the job. I think it's beautiful. I think it's great. Like for me, like I said before, I don't smoke, but at the same time, I don't see any problems with marijuana if people want to smoke it. It could be just like cigarettes. It really could. And we know what smoking does. You can sit there and tell all the harmful effects, just like you do a Surgeon General's warning. That ain't no problem. But it is amazing to me how slowly but surely these groups out here, these groups in these cities and states are finally starting to see the light. Now imagine when all 50 states actually get it. I'm telling you, marijuana being taxed will lead to an economic boom that will actually help out in a lot of areas. But we'll see. But that's really all the stories that we got, guys. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our feel-good segment. Like I said, in our feel-good segment here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of stories. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes the ones that are just morally gut-punching. But it's the weekend. It's sunny. Well, at least it's sunny in Tennessee because we've had rain a lot this week. But we're trying to do something, end it out on a good note, just trying to leave some good, positive vibes. And I played this story on Wednesday, and I like stories like this because it makes you question your integrity.
I'm working here for about a month and a half. I've noticed that there are a lot of weird things that have been donated. Hello, welcome to Goodwill.
And it's Andrea Lessing's job to sort through them.
You want to make sure we're selling good product, there's no stains, there's no holes, there's no tears, there's no rips.
One day, she came across 2 sweaters wrapped together, holding what she thought was books. It wasn't.
There was just stacks of just envelopes, and it just contained $100 bills. My first thought was, it's fake.
But it was real. A stack of $100 bills totaling to $42,000. The largest cash find in Goodwill's history in Oklahoma. Along with it, documents with information that helped them track down the owner, something that is also highly unusual.
Normally, we have no way to know who the money belongs to. Even if we wanted to try to give it back to someone, there was no way to find who that person was.
Of course, we're all only human, and the thought of keeping or hiding a find like that might cross our minds. But Andrea rose above that urge.
I have a daughter. I love her very much, and you can't put a price on my daughter. And I know what could be risked, stealing that money. And I do believe in karma. I believe that, if you do something good will come back to you.
And little did she know, she was minutes away from karma coming back to her. The owner of the money wanted to remain anonymous, but they did want to thank her for the integrity she showed that day.
They asked us if we would give you $1,000 that came out of that money and give that back to you. Okay. Thank you for what you're doing and your integrity. You really are living our values. Thank you. And that's for you.
Just like the moment when she found the money, Andrea's first thought here was her 6-year-old little girl.
And her birthday's coming up in July, so now I can actually give her an amazing
That's very cool.
birthday party.
Great. Well, your karma, we all agree with your comments on karma. It comes right back.
Just from
y'all, I did the same thing on Wednesday. Just because I want to sit there and say this, and I want to be very clear. You know, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with what she did, because again, it's an integrity test. And however, I did disagree with one thing though. It wasn't stealing, because again, once you donate something to Goodwill, in my mind, you have forfeited ownership of it. So anything that you donate, in this case, was a sweater that apparently was hiding money in it, you kind of gave that up. And once you gave that up, now anybody that finds it, because imagine if those sweaters were hanging up, you know, still bound together, but somewhere where another person found it, and they bought the sweaters, and they took it home, and lo and behold, they go through those sweaters, and all of a sudden money just falls out. They just found the money that they spent on $18 for 2 sweaters has translated into $42,000 hidden in the sweaters. Does that person return the money back? No. But I understand. But again, I said that stuff never happens to me. I wish it would, because people are like, well, would you return the money? What money? First thing I'd say, what money? I'm not gonna say tell everybody what I found. But at the same time, I get it. She believes in karma. She believes that whatever she finds that isn't hers isn't stealing. It's her life, not judgment, no arguments. But Lord, if it was me, if it was me, sometimes y'all be blocking y'all blessings. Sometimes, but at the same time, I commend her for that. Although the person who, you know, returned the $42,000 could have been a little bit more generous, just giving her $1,000. But hey, kudos for her and her integrity. But for me, I'd fail. The next story I have, guys, is about a Girl Scout troop. Because again, Girl Scout cookies. I used to have a next door neighbor that had her daughter did Girl Scouts, and she always had my order every year, and I miss that. I miss that convenience, because let's be honest, Girl Scout cookies are freaking addictive, and them little girls are gonna wind up being great business owners, because man, do they know how to move product. Anyway, did want to talk about the Girl Scout, about this certain Girl Scout out there, a troop out there that had a goal of selling 1,000 boxes, and they definitely did more than that and then some. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said before, the way Girl Scouts are, those are future business leaders. But man, do they know how to move product. Especially 50 states all selling Girl Scout cookies. Let me be honest, if you're a Thin Mint person, you're not gonna like me because I'm always about the sugar cookies and the toffee cookies. Those are the money winners in my opinion. But if you like Thin Mints, then no judgment. The last story I got, guys, is it's a unique story because every time I look at this, I'm reminded of my times when I had to go to church and it was always the flower brigade in the front 2 rows. I'll explain later.
Back with the upside and a woman who will definitely put a smile on your face on this Friday morning. Dr. Laverne Ford Wimberly is a former educator from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her church services went virtual at the beginning of the pandemic last year. But that didn't stop this 82-year-old from donning her Sunday best every week and then posting selfies.
The photos have now gone viral, and for good reason. So let's meet the newest internet darling and social media star, Dr. Laverne Ford Wimberly. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
We've been so excited to talk to you all morning. And, so many things, work meetings, church services, everything went virtual because of the pandemic. A lot of us use that as an excuse to just kind of stay in our pajamas or sweatpants. But you dressed up every Sunday. Why was that so important to you?
Well, I didn't want to become a vagabond, and I know that it takes 21 days to change a habit or either break a habit or get a new habit. Mm-hmm. And if I had sat at home in my sweats or something like that, I probably would not have wanted to dress up when we were able to go back to church. So it's just a matter of making myself feel good and also others who belong to my church. So that's why I started that post.
And I have to tell you, you're making so many others feel good. I, am homesick. Full disclosure, I think you probably know I used to work in Tulsa. And so when I saw your pictures on Instagram, it just took me home. There's so many women who love, the hats every Sunday morning. How has it been getting all this attention really all around the country?
I really can't believe all the attention that I have received the past 2 weeks. I just can't imagine what the fascination is or the attraction is for an 82-year-old woman that they keep calling and writing and texting. And I have just completed deleting about 800 friend requests.
What? My goodness. Yeah. Did you ever have a Sunday morning where you didn't feel like getting dressed up? And I think the reason why it resonated is because we want to hear your advice for making the best of sometimes a challenging situation.
No, I never felt not getting up or getting dressed because it started when I was a child. I have an older sister, and we always had to put on our Sunday best for church on Sundays, and we could not wear it any other time but on Sunday. So for 82 years, I've been putting on my Sunday best and so it has become a real habit.
Wow. Laverne, I have to ask, because I've been to the Kentucky Derby many, many times, and I can't keep my collection of hats because I have nowhere to put them. Where do you store all those hats, the beautiful, big, large hats that match those outfits so perfectly?
I have huge hat boxes in each bedroom, and so I have 3 bedrooms, and so they're all stored in the bedroom in the closets.
I love it.
I guess you need 3 bedrooms to store them all. I also have to ask about a unique connection that you have with Miss Chanel Jones over here. Are you guys sorority sisters?
Are we?
Definitely. Alpha, Kappa, Alpha, sorority, and cooperated. Yay, Chanel.
My sister and now my auntie. I'm so happy that we were able to talk with you this morning. You have a huge Easter Sunday coming up. It will be, from what I hear, outfit number 55. Are you ready? Is there a sneak peek we can get? Or now you got the whole country waiting?
Well, I don't have the outfit in hand, but I do have a hat close by, and I'll be wearing pink and black. And I'll put the hat on for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous. You make me want to go get a hat. What about you, Dylan?
I love it. Like I said, I have a lot, but mine don't compare to yours, Laverne. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
God bless you.
God bless you.
That was interesting. That the fact that, like I said, a lot of elderly people do dress up, especially for remote services, just because of COVID restrictions. They're not allowed to go into church because of the chances of them being greater chances of them to get infected. But, you know, old people be dressing up sharp. And the reason I was sitting there saying with the flower garden, if you've never been to a church in the old days, especially, I know not nobody, I mean, you're not going to do it now, but I remember when I was growing up, we used to call it the flower brigade. I used to call it the flower garden, just because all the ladies had hats similar to hers, where it was big and it was floral decorations everywhere. They always sat in front of the front 2 rows, looked like a freaking garden. And my little bad tail would have candy or nerds or something, and I would treat that like I'm playing, like I'm telling on myself. I would treat that like a game. Like, okay, like the top of the hat. It was a brim, but that brim had like a little bit of space, and I kind of treated it like one of those games you play, at a fair, where you're trying to, you know, get the little pebble inside the Coke bottle. Yeah, same principle. So there I am, about 4 rows back. The flower garden's in front of me. All I could sit there and do was this, just flick it forward, and I could see trying to hit. I know you're probably all saying I'm effing terrible. I know you guys are. It's fine. I was a very bored kid in church, but all jokes aside, I do like the fact that she's still taking pride in herself and really just looking forward to church and not breaking the habit, if it makes sense. But it just made me think about the times I got in trouble for throwing nerds at old ladies' hats. Anyway, that's really all that we got, guys, for this podcast. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for sharing. I know you can't start watch parties anymore because Zuckerberg is, Zuckerberg's a dick. But again, thank you for that. And before we get out of here, I do have to do some shameless plugging. I do need to talk about my travel page. Yes, your boy does do travel. Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, in which I do travel, whether it's down the street, across the pond, or across states. Let me be your travel person and actually get you where you want to go, because my mission in life with this travel service is to basically get you where you want to go and have you save as much money as possible, because that's really 2 things you want to do on a trip, right? So again, anybody that's actually looking to travel, just definitely let me know. Reach out to me, Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, on Facebook, or on Facebook at William Buchanan, and let me know of your travel times and when you want to go, and let me be the guy that gets you there, because at Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, we just don't sell travel, we sell great memories. And currently right now, I do have a referral going, so if you know somebody that needs to book any type of travel, whether it's hotel, car, airfare, rental, let's try it again. If you know anybody that needs to book car, airfare, or hotel, or all the above, definitely send them to me. And as long as they book with me, then you'll get paid $100. And there is no limits on referrals on that. So if you know 2 people, 20 people, or 200 people, then it's going to be a good day for you regardless. So definitely pass them all my way. Also, I want to talk about my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA on Facebook, who will be starting back his podcast tomorrow, hopefully, because as you can see right now, he might have got Zuckerberg because his page is looking a little light. But anyway, my buddy Big BZA Vaughn, who will also probably be joining me a little bit later today. He actually does do podcasts as well. I know right now he might be Zuckerberg, but anyway, he does do podcasts as well, and I'm actually looking forward to his podcast to be coming back. The VST, which is a news podcast. That news can be movies, video games, or trailers. He loves shows. Vaughn is the king of weird trailers. But sometimes he shows trailers that are very good, and sometimes he shows trailers where I question our friendship, but I still love him all the same. He also has another show for the sake of this podcast we're called RAF. RAF is basically America's Funniest Home Videos if done by WorldStar. So it's definitely adult. Do not bring your kids, but for the adults, it's pretty funny. It's meant to reset your weekends on in the right way. But it's an interactive show, just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over albums from the past and present, or sometimes new stuff. Or sometimes he asks us to bring it, because like you said, the whole point of Rhythmness is to basically introduce you to music you've never heard of and therefore become fans of it. Because of Vaughn, I actually did learn about new artists and add them to my ever-growing music library. So Rhythmness is successful in bringing new music to those that you may have not given the first chance to look at or listen to, but you definitely will in that podcast, and it's interactive as well. And finally, he does have another podcast called Fonkin' Around. Well, it's more of a pop-up show in which it's a demonstration, a showcase, if you will, of Vaughn creating beats from beginning to end. So if you definitely like those beats, they are for sale. Just reach out to Vaughn on BigVZA and he will tell you how exactly you can purchase those purchase those beats. But like I said, hopefully he'll be here a little bit later today for me for Off Limits later tonight at 8:30 to 10 o'clock. But aside from that, definitely check him out, BigVZA on Facebook. Now, the link at the bottom, as you can see, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree. My link tree does have the Facebook and YouTube pages for all of my podcasts, for How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and How the Frack How the Frack We Got Here, and Off Limits as well, because I feel like I didn't say it before, but I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I said it just to be clear. But yes, they do have Facebook and YouTube pages, so you can definitely see every post, every podcast that I've done from either site. But definitely like and share. And also, if you know somebody that's into this, or you know somebody that loves this kind of stuff, let them know about it as well and increase the field, because I'm really trying to make these podcasts more entertaining, more enjoyable, and just overall, hopefully it takes me to a place I've always wanted to go. I know a place. I don't know why that song stuck in my head. Anyway, my podcast schedule still hasn't changed, guys. Of course, every Wednesday from 8:30 to 10 is the midweek edition of How the Frack We Got Here. Every Friday from 8:30 to 10 is my Get Bit podcast. We just had one last night, going over Kong versus Godzilla and a number of other things, especially the CW shows of the week. As you can see today, even though we did run a little bit late, from 10 a.m. to noon is the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here. And of course, tonight at 8:30 to 10 will be the Off Limits podcast, in which nothing is off limits. And we're definitely going to talk about Lil Nas X this week, and how he relates to the LGBTQ community. So it's definitely going to be an interesting podcast tonight. But all of my shows can be found under my Facebook page, William Buchanan, and also the link that you see at the bottom. So definitely do that. And the last thing I'll say is, guys, before I get out of here, is that COVID-19 is real. Please do wear a mask, regardless if you have your shot or not. Please wear a mask. Please do social distancing. Please make sure you're not trying to put yourself in areas where it's too crowded. Also, if you are able to get the shot, please do so, because the more people we have vaccinated, the more the effect is going to happen. The sooner we can get to some level of normalcy. We're not going to get back to the normal we once knew, but we'll get back to a level to where we can all function and enjoy the world again. Aside from that, thank you all essential people. When I say essential people, I mean doctors, nurses aid, doctors aid, grocery store, gas station attendants, those that are truck drivers, those that work in warehouses like Amazon, and those that work in logistics like United States Postal Service, UPS, DHL, and also teachers, first aid responders. All of you guys right now are essential people, and you are definitely should be honored for everything and all that you do. Beyond that, guys, How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about informing. We're not trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade people. We are simply just trying to give you the information and provide the facts in order for you to remain informed, to allow you to make up your own mind. So, because we found out that our society does a lot better once we're informed. When we're uninformed, we get Trump. When we're informed, we get our first woman black vice president. But, hoping for Michelle for president. Anyway, this has been great, guys. I've had a lot of fun. Hopefully you had too. And if you're watching this live, and thank you for people that commented. And if you're watching this on the playback, please comment as if it's live. I still want to know you guys' opinions. Aside from that, please be safe on this Easter weekend. And aside from that, guys, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll get through this.